Welcome students, today is February the 18th and our first task today is going to be a retrieval practice link. So go ahead and click right here on the retrieval practice link. The form is going to come up and I want you to go ahead and make sure to put your first and your last name. Click beside your teacher's name, and there's some questions that are not related to math on here, but I want you to just answer to the best of your ability. And there are a couple of questions related directly to math. So what does the word sum mean in a math word problem? Go through our answer choices here, and I want you to click on what you think is the best answer. And also, what is half of 24? Choose what you think is the best answer and click beside it. Also, the last one, what is your favorite thing to drink? After you finish all of these, go ahead and submit. So after you finish all of these, go ahead and submit them. And remember, you can pause as often as you need to. Today our lesson is exploring decimal fractions. And this is lesson number 13. I've got our multiplication table here as a resource for you on our next slide. And after that, I've got slides where you can take a picture of your work if you're working in your binder or your notebook, and insert a picture of your work here so that your teacher can see your work. Our learning target for today, I will expand my understanding of equivalent fractions to explore decimal fractions, tenths, and hundredths using area model, number line, and decimal grids. I will create visual models and written explanations to explain my thinking. Our essential questions: why might it be important to understand equivalence? Why is unit size important in mathematics? And our first slide for our launch here is buying music. So this is also going to be on a Jamboard. Buying music. Brianna wanted to download some music which cost 50 cents. What fraction of a dollar is 50 cents? Show how you know. Now, some questions I want you to consider. So if you're doing this independently at home, you're not going to have a partner. So I want you to work through these as best that you can, but these are some questions I want you to consider. Why did you use that strategy to solve the problem? And how does your strategy, maybe do it two different ways. Do two different strategies. How does your first strategy compare to your second strategy? Okay, so and keeping in mind that 50 cents is half of a dollar. So 50 cents is half of a dollar, which is half of one whole. So 50 cents is half of a dollar, which is half of one whole. So go ahead and pause the video, and you can work this in your, like I said, this is on a Jamboard that's been assigned to you. Also, you can work in your notebook. So on our Jamboard, a couple of strategies that you could have used that we've already practiced is the tape diagram. You could have represented the entire diagram whole as $1 and half of it shaded in here. You could have done it that way. If you use the number line, you could have represented the whole as $1, and you could have represented 50 cents right here in the middle. So those are two different ways that you could have done it. Now in our next few slides, guys, we're going to introduce fractional decimals. So fractional decimals is what we're introducing next. And a fractional decimal is a fraction whose denominator is a power of 10 and whose numerator is expressed by figures placed to the right of the decimal point. All right, so and I'll repeat that. A decimal fraction is a fraction whose denominator is a power of 10 and whose numerator is expressed by figures placed to the right of the decimal point. So let's take a look at these. Now this is actually on page 197 in your binder, and it's also going to be on your Jamboard. So you got page 197 in your binder, and it's also on your Jamboard. All right, so let's take a look. Let's just examine it first. You've got, for number 1, you're showing 1/2. 2 is 5/10. 3, 1/10. 4, 3/10. Number 5 here, 7/10. 6, 9/10. So we're actually going to shade these in to represent the fraction below it. So we're going to shade these in to represent the fraction below them. Okay, so for this one, for instance, I want you to shade in 1/2. What would 1/2 look like for this entire grid? And number two, what would 5/10 look like? And so forth. So I want you to go ahead and pause the video, and you can go to the Jamboard to shade them in, or you can do it in your math binder, page 197. All right, you've had a chance to shade in these by representing each fraction below it. So let's take a look. 1/2. 1/2 of this grid, you should have shaded in. 1/2 of the entire grid is what we shaded in for this one. Okay, and let's go to our next one. 5/10. 5/10, and we're going to explore it a little bit further in just a second. So 5 out of 10 is shaded here. And 1/10. This is 1/10. This represents 1/10 on the grid. So let's go back to our 1/2. Some things that you have to keep in mind is that all of these grids look alike. And what you should notice is that there's a row. There are 10 different rows going down. And so each of these represent a row. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So there's 10 different rows. And guess what? There are also 10 different columns. There are 10 different columns going down. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 different columns. Now, you're looking at this entire grid as a whole. You're looking at it as an entire whole. So when I say 1/2, that means that you have to shade in 1/2 of the entire grid. And when you shade in 1/2 of it, you're going to shade in 5 entire columns all the way down, or you're going to shade in 5 entire rows all the way across. So as you shaded it in from here all the way up, just on that part, it still would have represented 1/2. It still would have been 1/2. It would have looked a little different, but it still would have been 1/2. So your goal would be to shade in 1/2 the entire grid. And let's take a look at our 5/10. Now, once again, there are 10 different columns and there are 10 rows. So your goal is to shade in 5 out of the 10. So when we look at the columns, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. If you notice, I shaded in 5 entire columns, 5 out of the 10 entire columns on here. And let's take a look at our last one, 1/10. So for this one, our goal was to shade in 1 out of 10 columns. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 1 out of the 10 columns has been shaded in. Now, you could have done it a little bit different if you wanted. You could have shaded in by rows. You could have shaded in 1 row, and you still would be accurate. You still would be correct because you shaded in 1 out of 10 rows. So 1 out of the 10. So there's 2 different ways you could have done that. Now, it wouldn't really make a difference had you come down here, had you shaded this part in. You could have done that, and you'd be correct. Or you could have done this, you'd be correct. That's still 1 out of 10. You still shaded in 1 out of 10, and you still be correct on that. All right, there's more practice here for you, and this one's also going to be on a Jamboard on page 198. So independent practice on a Jamboard or on page 198, and there are 6 problems on here, and I want you to shade those in. So if you're doing it in your binder on page 198, you have to take a picture of your work and insert it into the slides. Now the next one is also dealing with the grids. Page 199. Page 199, I want you to shade in, says you will work on this activity with these fractions, 7/10, 6/10, 2/10, 25/100, 85/100, 57/100. So you're going to shade in the grids to justify your thinking. I want you to label them. So if you choose this and you shade it in to be 7/10, make sure to label it 7/10 at the top or the side of it or the bottom. So make sure to label each one. And lastly, just a reminder, complete the independent work on the Jamboard or on page 198. And also, your teacher has assigned you comparing fractions in Khan Academy. I want you to work on Khan Academy on comparing fractions.